All right. Good evening, students. Welcome to tonight's homework. Tonight we will be reviewing some of the battles towards the end of the Revolutionary War and some key turning points. For each battle, I would like you to define it in your composition book vocabulary section. I would like you to name it, tell me what happened, why it was important, and what effect each battle would have for the American cause. This evening we'll be looking at the battles of Saratoga, the internal battle that was the winter camp at Valley Forge, and the British Southern Campaign in the southern colonies of America. These battles blended success and failure for the American army, but they brought the army together and made it stronger in order to finish the war. The first battles that we will look at tonight are the battles that made up Saratoga. These battles were of strategic importance for the American forces because they limited the ability of the British to isolate New England and essentially cut the head off of the snake. British General Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne was traveling south from Canada in order to link up with British forces traveling north from New York. In essence, he was trying to cut off all access to Massachusetts and the hotbed of revolution, New England. This is a major turning point in the war where approximately 5,000 British surrender to the American General Horatio Gates. Now, Saratoga is a mixed bag because it is a brilliant victory for the Americans. However, it came at the loss of a very important general, not to death, but actually to traitorism. Horatio Gates decided to take all the credit for this battle, even though most historians give the success of the battle to Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold and his troops led numerous charges, full frontal charges, at the British line, essentially forcing them back with such ferocity until they forced back and eventually surrendered. However, when it came time to write the report, Gates claimed all of the credit and actually forgot to put Arnold's name in the report. In the ensuing battle, he was injured. He eventually married a loyalist woman who encouraged him to turn traitor to the British. While the loss of Arnold was major to the colonial efforts, what they gained from Saratoga was of great importance. First off, this encouraged King Louis XVI of France to change his policy towards the Americans and began helping them in earnest. He gave them money, he gave them shot, he gave them gunpowder, and most importantly, he gave them a navy that now could stand toe-to-toe with the British Navy. France and the Americans formed this alliance in February 1778. France declares war on Britain the next month. Spain follows suit in order to help the Americans as well, and this allows Bernardo de Galvez to lead charges against the British in Louisiana and remove them from Louisiana and Florida, handing that territory back to Spain. Now, the battles of Saratoga, as I said, were known for numerous things, specifically the heroics of Benedict Arnold. However, it was important to note that the rest of the Continental Army did play a strong effort, as is noted here by Gentleman General Johnny Burgoyne in his diary, that essentially the Continentals kept up continuous fire for nearly 20 days on the British soldiers until eventually the British soldiers had no choice but to surrender, tired and basically worn out from constant battle over that period. Now, the next event that we will be discussing today is the winter camp of Valley Forge between the winter of 1777 and 78. After Saratoga, which was in New York, Washington and his men decided that they were going to retreat south to Pennsylvania to make their winter camps. They made it in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, At this point, the American army was essentially without food or clothing, and Valley Forge was an extremely intense place for them. Supplies ran out, men starved to death. Washington appeals to Congress for help, but they don't have help to give. This is a low point for the American army. Even though they say deserters are shot, very few soldiers, in fact, do desert. Subsisting on essentially what we call fire cake, which is just water and flour cooked over hot stones over a fire. The men at Valley Forge had an incredibly difficult time. Before then, they were rather healthy and basically foraging off the land. However, now during the winter months, they became sick and discontented and essentially out of humor, not willing to make a go at it anymore. However, George Washington would use this time at Valley Forge in order to make his army the fighting force that would be able to stand toe-to-toe with the greatest army at the face of the earth at the time. At this point in the war, the Marquis de Lafayette is named by George Washington as his aide-de-camp, or his personal assistant. And more importantly, he enlists the services of another foreigner, a German or a Prussian by the name of Frederick von Steuben. Von Steuben was what we would call today a drill sergeant, and he took the tattered American army, or the Continental Army, from a voluntary fighting force or a militia and made them a solid stand-on-their-own military force. And he did this by teaching them how to drill, how to use bayonets, and how to move as one unit and follow orders like they never had before. In this way, now the American army would be able to move on the field as well as the British army, and they could outflank them and work to defeat them. The last portion of battles that we will discuss are the Southern battles, or the Southern War. After 3 unsuccessful years in the North and encountering very tough resistance, the British decided that they would move to the South in order to take advantage of what they saw as loyalists in the southern colonies, specifically Georgia and South Carolina. They believed the loyalists would rise up against the Patriots, help the British, and destroy the Patriot cause. Southern locals, however, most of them fought back using what we call guerrilla warfare. This was led by a man that got the moniker the Swamp Fox, known as Francis Marion. The forces that Marion would lead were colonial militias or patriot militias in the South, and oftentimes they would be fighting against loyalist militias. Now, while the Continental Army and the British Army maintained gentlemanly warfare, these militias would go at each other with increasing fervor, not only attacking each other on the battlefield, but also attacking patriot or loyalist houses and settlements. The most notorious battle between these groups was the battle at Kings Mountain, where patriot forces slaughtered almost every loyalist militia member on the field of battle, not accepting surrender. While Marion was waging guerrilla warfare throughout the South, General Lord Cornwallis's stronger British forces was attempting to chase down the rest of the Continental Army, at this point under the command of... While Marion was playing guerrilla warfare with the Patriot militias, Nathaniel Greene was in charge of the rest of the Continental Army in the South. Essentially, his strategy was simple: stay out of the grips of General Lord Cornwallis. Periodically, Greene and his men would stop and skirmish with the British, but it was more important for them to keep the British moving and keep their supply lines long, and essentially, eventually, tire them out and move them into a strategic position where they would eventually be able to attack them with a larger military force and the French Navy when it was strategically best for them. This would happen at the Battle of Yorktown, which we will discuss tomorrow. Be ready with these notes tomorrow, and please write down 3 additional questions that you have for Mr. Wilson to discuss in class tomorrow. Thank you very much. Good night.